Alex is 34. Good job. His own place. Reads books about systems and then watches himself interact with them. He's been on the apps for 8 months. Tonight, he swiped 47 times and got 1 reply. Hey. No follow-up. Nothing. He doesn't throw his phone. He opens a spreadsheet. Hours logged, matches returned, dates that actually happened. He runs the numbers the way he'd evaluate any investment. The ROI comes back insulting. So he closes the app. Not because he's angry, because the math told him something the app never would. What happens when a rational man figures out the game was broken before he even downloaded it? That's what this video's about. Act 1. The casino floor. Alex isn't the guy you'd expect to be struggling with this. He's not bitter. He's not inexperienced. He's the kind of person who reads about systems and then watches himself interact with them. That self-awareness is exactly why the apps hit him differently than most. He didn't fail at dating apps, he studied them. And that turned out to be worse, because once you start seeing the architecture underneath, you can't stop. The notification that arrives just when you were about to log off. The match that shows up after 3 days of silence, right when you're about to delete the app. The friction built into the free version that makes visibility feel like something you have to earn. None of this is accidental. Dating apps are not matchmaking tools. They are engagement platforms. The goal isn't to get you a date. The goal is to keep you opening the app. And they are extraordinarily good at this because they're built on the same psychological mechanics as a slot machine. Here's the engine. Variable reward schedules. You don't get a match every time you swipe. And you don't get nothing every time either. You get matches unpredictably. That unpredictability is the point. Your brain can't settle into a pattern that doesn't have one, so it keeps pulling the lever. Intermittent reinforcement, that's the technical name. It's the most powerful conditioning tool in behavioral psychology. It's how you train a rat to press a button compulsively, and the apps have industrialized it. Alex tracks his usage for 30 days. Every session, every swipe, every match, every conversation that went anywhere. At the end of the month, he has his answer. If this were a business, he'd have shut it down in week 2. But he didn't shut it down in week 2. He kept going. And that gap between what he knew and what he kept doing is exactly what we need to talk about. Act 2, the rigged math. Here's what the data actually shows, not what the apps want you to believe. Median women on dating apps get matched 41% of the time. Median men, 2%. That's not a gap, that's a different game entirely. Alex swipes 50 times and statistically gets 1 match. That match may not reply. That reply may not lead anywhere. The funnel from swipe to actual date is so narrow that low match rate doesn't really capture it. You're not underperforming. You're operating inside a structure that was never designed to produce equal outcomes. Now, factor in the top 1%. The most algorithmically favored men on the platform pull a 45% match rate. Think about that. 1% of male users are capturing nearly half the available matches. The rest of the male user base divides what's left. The app isn't a town square. It's a velvet rope system dressed up as a meritocracy. If you're not in that top tier, and statistically almost no one is, you're invisible to most women scrolling past you. And the ratio makes it worse. Tinder runs roughly 55 to 66% male. You've built a nightclub where 2/3 of the people waiting outside are men. The demand side is overloaded. The supply side is selective. So women can afford to be extraordinarily choosy, and they are. That's not a criticism. That's just math when the ratio breaks down. Alex doesn't take this personally anymore. Not once he sees the numbers. He's not getting ignored because something is wrong with him. He's getting ignored because the math was never in his favor before he swiped once. But the apps have a solution. You can pay for it. Boosts, super likes, premium visibility. The app will sell you the exposure you'd theoretically have if the platform weren't structurally designed to suppress it. You're essentially paying to rent a normal playing field, one that should have been the baseline. The inadequacy you feel when your match rate flatlines isn't an accident. It's the product. A man who feels invisible is far more likely to upgrade his subscription than a man who feels confident. Alex sees this clearly after his 30-day audit. He's not just losing at dating, he's paying for the privilege of losing. Because someone built a system that monetizes the gap between what men hope for and what the algorithm delivers. Here's what I want to know. Have you ever actually tracked your match rate? Even roughly? Drop your number in the comments. Most men haven't looked. The ones who have, they know. This is the moment Alex realizes quitting isn't the irrational move. Staying is. Act 3, the psychological tax. The match rate doesn't just affect your dating life, it rewires how you think about yourself. Here's what's actually happening in the brain. Every time Alex opens the app and finds nothing, his brain registers it as a small social rejection. Not dramatic, not the kind you'd notice and process. Just a quiet little signal that says, "Not wanted." Multiply that by dozens of sessions a week, hundreds of swipes over months. So what you end up with isn't a string of bad luck. You end up trained. The brain can't tell the difference between the algorithm skipped your photo and a person decided you weren't worth responding to. It logs them the same way. That's the first hit. And most men don't notice it until it's already changed how they move through the world. The second hit is quieter and more dangerous. A 2% match rate, experienced day after day, doesn't stay as data. It becomes a self-assessment. The platform frames your desirability as a number, and your brain, which is wired to update your social standing based on feedback, starts to absorb that number as truth. Alex starts to feel less like a man with a lot to offer and more like a product with poor market value. That shift is subtle at first. Then it isn't. He notices it when he's not even on the app. A woman makes eye contact with him at a coffee shop. His first instinct isn't confidence, it's doubt. He's importing the algorithm's verdict into a world that operates by completely different rules, and he doesn't fully realize that's what he's doing. This is not an accident. The app doesn't need Alex to feel worthless. It just needs him to feel almost good enough. Close enough to believe the next boost might close the gap. Not successful enough to stop needing the product. His self-perception is the raw material. His insecurity is the conversion funnel. The business model only works on men who are almost successful. And here's the strange part. Alex knows the system is rigged. He ran the numbers. He can explain the match rate asymmetry clearly. But he keeps opening the app. Because somewhere under the analysis, the variable reward still registers as hope. The rational brain says the ROI is broken. The emotional brain says, maybe tonight is different. That gap between knowing and stopping is where months of unnecessary damage build up. The moment Alex actually uninstalls, something unexpected happens. Not immediately. Within days, the background anxiety he'd been carrying starts to lift. Not because his love life changed overnight, because the thing generating the daily rejection signal was gone. Without the app feeding the loop had nothing to run on. The counterintuitive truth he arrives at: the platform wasn't helping him date. It was creating a psychological deficit that only the platform could fix. It built the wound, sold the bandage, and the bandage never fully covered the wound, because the wound was the point. Once Alex names that clearly, the decision in front of him isn't emotional anymore. It's just logical. You don't keep funding a system that profits from making you feel like less. Act 4, the calculated exit. The delete button is easy. Anyone can hit it after a bad night. What Alex does is different. He doesn't uninstall after a frustrating week of silence. He doesn't make the decision at 1 a.m. out of irritation. He makes it on a Tuesday afternoon, at his desk, looking at the spreadsheet. He treats it the way he'd treat any investment that keeps underperforming. Stop allocating resources to it. No drama, no final scroll. He archives the app the way you'd archive a business venture, with a plausible thesis and a broken model. Document the lesson, move on. That distinction matters. Because how you exit tells you something about why you're leaving. Men who quit out of frustration tend to come back. The emotional charge fades, the app still exists, and re-downloading takes 30 seconds. Men who quit because the analysis is complete don't have the same pull. There's no unresolved question left to answer. Alex isn't wondering if things might improve. He's done wondering. This is what a high-agency exit looks like, not abandonment, divestment. Here's what men lose when they stay on the apps longer than the data justifies. It's not just time. It's more specific than that. Social calibration goes first, the actual skill of reading a room, picking up on nonverbal signals, holding a conversation without a screen in between. That skill atrophies when you're not using it. Swiping doesn't replace it. Real-world confidence reads differently than profile confidence. One is tested in the moment against an actual person. The other gets optimized in private against an algorithm's preferences. They are not the same muscle. Alex recognizes he's been training the wrong one. The identity shift that follows his exit isn't about rejecting dating. It's about refusing to define his social worth by metrics he didn't design and can't control. He stops being a participant in someone else's ranking system. He starts operating by his own. That's not a small adjustment. It changes how he occupies space, how he walks into a room, how he starts conversations. He didn't quit to go home alone. He quit to build something the algorithm couldn't measure. Act 5. The rebuild. Alex doesn't walk out of the casino and immediately meet someone. That's not how this works. What happens instead is slower and more useful than a quick win. He makes different choices about where he puts his hours, not grand life overhauls. Specific, deliberate decisions about environment. He joins a climbing gym, not because he read about it, because it's a place where you show up repeatedly, you get better at something visible, and the people around you watch that happen over time. That matters more than it sounds. Here's the psychology. Repeated low-pressure contact with someone builds familiarity. Familiarity builds comfort, and comfort is one of the foundations that attraction actually grows from. This is called the mere exposure effect. It's one of the most replicated findings in social psychology. And it cannot happen through a dating app. The second mechanism is behavioral visibility. On a dating app, you're 6 photos and a bio. In a climbing gym, a run club, or a professional network built around shared interest, you're a person who solves problems, handles frustration, encourages others, and shows up consistently. Those are attractive qualities. They just don't compress into a profile. Alex can't compress 6 months of showing up into 6 photos. The environment does the compression for him because the people around him are watching the same man across time, not making a split-second call about a stranger's face. The time that used to bleed into the app gets redirected. He runs harder, puts more into the business he'd been meaning to scale, reads more, sleeps better. The ambient anxiety of waiting for a notification, gone. Something changes in how he carries himself, and it's not mysterious. He's stopped performing for an algorithm's approval. So the performance anxiety attached to that disappears. When he talks to a woman in a real environment, he's not managing what his profile says about him. He's not calculating whether he should have swiped differently. He's just present. That presence is something you can feel on the other side of a conversation. It's also something you can't fake. And it's something the apps were actively suppressing. His self-worth detaches from match rates, from notification counts, from whether someone swiped right on a Tuesday night. None of that is a relevant measurement anymore, because he stopped participating in a system that used those metrics as a proxy for his value. Social calibration comes back faster than he expected. Reading a room is a skill. Skills return when you practice them. Within a few months, he's holding conversations with the kind of ease that had felt distant for almost a year. Not because he learned a technique, because he got out of an environment that had been replacing real interaction with a simulation of it. Conclusion: 6 months after he archived the app, Alex is dating, not more people, better ones. Without the weight he used to carry into every conversation, the apps didn't fail him. He just stopped mistaking an engagement platform for a dating one, once he understood what it actually was. The most attractive move Alex made wasn't fixing his profile. It was deciding he didn't need the algorithm's approval to know his own worth. Here's the question I want to leave you with. Is the problem the apps themselves, or is it that men stay on them 2 years past the point where the data already gave them the answer? I've seen both sides argued hard. Tell me which one you're on in the comments. I read every single one. And if this breakdown hit something real for you, subscribe. There's a lot more where this came from.